out, everyone. Welcome to our Netsafe webinar, Staying Safe Online, Supporting Your School Community for Teachers and School Leaders. My name is Andrew Cowie. I'm the Education Team Lead for the Netsafe Education and Schools team, coming to you from Auckland, which is a little bit sunny and a little bit rainy right now. We're really pleased to have you with us today. We are going to be going through a number of tips and strategies that you can use with your parents, with your whānau, with members of your community to help them through lockdown, to help them through some of the challenges that come with home learning. Just a little bit of background. I was a deputy principal for 5 years, on top of about 20 years of teaching experience. So I spent a lot of time in the education sector. I also am a parent to two teenage boys and have the experiences of last lockdown of last year, of 2020, and of course the experience is we are all in this time around. What's really exciting is that I'm co-presenting today with our education advisor based in the South Island, based in Christchurch. We're really excited to have you with us today. The links that we'll be sharing with you today we'll be sharing along the bottom there as part of the banner. We'll include it in the metadata and as part of the YouTube post as well. So there'll be lots of ways to reconnect with the resources and advice that we'll be sharing with you today. As part of our outline, we have quite a bit to discuss today. We're really wanting to look at a lot of proactive things that we can do to stay safe online, and we'll include a lot of those from learning profile all the way to agreements, as well as some filtering options you can explore from home. We'll take a break halfway through, and what we'll do there is just any comments and questions that you have in YouTube, we will take a look at and try to answer them for you here as part of this webinar. And then we'll be going into some privacy considerations, the harmful digital communications, and a few other takeaways. And we will even look at doing a survey, because we want to do this webinar again. Netsafe, we're an NGO. We've been around for about 20 years, keeping New Zealanders safe online. And we support New Zealand through a variety of channels, through our help desk for helpline, which you can get a hold of Netsafe in a variety of ways. And that's 364 days a year, 7 days a week, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. 5 during the weekdays and 9 to 5 on weekends. And there's a variety of ways you can reach out to us. I am, of course, leading a team that is more involved on the school front, and which is very much about mitigating risk, prevention, education, and discussion. So if there are questions you have related to how we could support you at school, we have lots that we'd love to share with you. And I hope today's session will give you a bit of an overview of some of those things we can share. Just to get into just some online etiquette as well. I'll back up there. This is just around what we do, I guess, with Netsafe on the whole, across all the teams that we have. It's all about negotiation, mediation, persuasion. When something goes wrong online, we want to be able to support you with advice, with options, with some ways, some strategies, some ways that you can support one another in your school community and all throughout New Zealand. We get a variety of calls and requests and reports a day, and it has been a very busy time, as you can imagine, with our level 3, level 4, level 2 lockdown, whatever it is. We are spending more time online. And so the amount of time we spend online needs the amount of time we spend talking about things online and looking at that world needs to be in direct proportion to that. And we need to spend more time having those conversations. All right. So just if you do have questions, please add them, or comments, please add them to the chat. And we will, we're quite happy to answer those questions as we go. If you have anything else that you want to ask, there's the email there. We'll be sharing that as we go along. So please make yourselves comfortable, and everything that we share today will be available either to come back as a recorded YouTube seminar. So if you wanted to share this with a colleague, or you can't stay for today's duration, we will share this. This will be available probably by tomorrow as a YouTube recorded video. All right, let's get into it. Okay. One of the things that you've probably seen this before and you're wondering about, am I going to be talking about COVID? And I'm not. But the Swiss cheese model that is often discussed is around the way we think about multiple layers of safety or measures that we have in place around COVID. That even if one system fails, there's another layer behind it that can also be there to support. And we need to think about online safety in a very similar way, because there is no one single silver bullet. There's no one particular thing that's going to keep everyone safe. And we often have lots of conversations with parents who really want just to have a one-stop shop. They want to know that there's a filter, an app, something they can do that will give them peace of mind. And of course, there are multiple fronts that we need to think about when it comes to online safety. And so when we think about online safety, we think about a whole, I guess the first of all is the ability to mirror what is going on at school from a basic filtering level. So New Zealand schools are all blessed to have Network for Learning as part of their internet security and their filtering, which gives everyone around New Zealand in schools a very consistent, strong, robust internet filtering. And what we want to do is try to replicate that at home. So what you can do as a school leader, and many of you have probably done this already, is to share switch on safety. If you go online and just type in switch on safety, what it allows you to do is your parents, your community can get the DNS setting, look at the DNS settings of their child's devices and go through a very step-by-step process in order to work through that and create a very similar experience that they would have at school. So that is a baseline, very much a baseline internet safety layer. And it's nice to be able to replicate what is at school while they are at home. So it's a step-by-step approach. Paula, you're back. Hello.
Kia ora. Sorry, good old technical difficulties down in Otatahi today.
That's all right. I was just I didn't want to have to share the story because I thought you did it so well. I was just sharing switch on safety. And I know that you actually tested this in your own home.
Yeah, I did. When I first started with Netsafe and was learning all the things available to keep our young people safe online, I switched on to safety, came across my path, and I thought, how am I going to test this? Because if I'm going to talk to people about it, how am I going to test it? So I actually snuck it on my husband's phone when he wasn't aware and just sort of let it do its thing and watched him over the period of the evening getting a little bit more and more frustrated as whatever he was choosing to look like was not coming through. So I can absolutely guarantee you it does work. And I can tell you that I am still married as well.
So that's one of the layers, and it gives parents peace of mind to know that that's out there. It's a free service. It's a really clear, easy to follow instructions step by step on how to change it. Now we know that lots of kids find ways, of course, as they get older and more sophisticated with their technology, they find ways around filters. So we know that that's not something we can count on completely, but certainly at a primary school age, trying to match the filters that are at school for your children while they're learning is a really good move. So that's a good first move. The second thing I would like to point to is really around an ongoing conversation between different people in your school community, right? So starting at the top at 12 o'clock there, we've got students who are really learning about what your children at home are learning to do online. This is low-hanging fruit right now because, of course, we're all spending so much more time online. Parents are aware of what's happening online with their children much more. So hopefully the conversations are happening already, and the conversations are happening based out of curiosity rather than suspicion. Sometimes we don't react or respond to what our children are doing online until something goes wrong, but showing a genuine interest in what they're doing, what they love to do for fun, what a strength it is to their own personal interest, well-being, the way they connect online is a really important conversation to have. And then moving around that table there, we have, connecting with whānau and caregivers and other people who are looking after our children, being able to host parent nights, conversations, ongoing meetings where it is a conversation between people is really key as well. And I think then being able to make sure that the teachers are also adding to that conversation, the community, around, your school counselors, community constables, officers, local police officers, Senko, RTLB, all of those people, we all need to be able to come together and talk about what are we noticing online and what kind of effects are we having? Because so much of what happens online can happen in such a private silo setting. And what we want to try to do is unsilo those conversations as much as we can. And I guess that final piece there, Paula, I guess, which you and I have both talked to many schools about, is that leadership piece, which is around what are your procedures, what are your policies, what do those agreements look like that you're promoting at a school level? So.
Yeah, definitely. Those policies and procedures sit behind so much of what we do at a school level, and they're the backbone of what supports us when we need to implement agreements or when we need to respond to a crisis. Just really want to uffy what you said there about having everyone at the table, Andrew. My experience talking with schools and whānau is that there is a lot of hesitation in this space about talking to our young people. Whereas what research tells us is when we open up those conversations and everyone's at the table, students feel a lot more successful in the space of learning online.
Yeah, you got way more currency when things go wrong if you've already been talking about what's happening online. Talk about what's going right so that you can then deal with what goes wrong. Okay, now some real specific strategies that you can do share with your community. And one of those things is activating a learner profile. Now, what I mean by this is when you activate a learner profile, just go back to that previous slide there. Thank you. When you activate a learner profile, this is about creating a username on your device, on your child's device, where you are only getting access to a streamlined learning-based set of tools. So you might have bookmarks that are more for education. You might have different educational games. You might have access to Google Classroom, Seesaw, whatever it is, but you've got all of the learning tools that you need are there and they are in front of you and they're streamlined. You haven't got all of the extra stuff that would might clutter up your desktop, because there are so many distractions online as it is. To be able to toggle between your learning profile, a learner profile, and going back to sort of a leisure profile or one that you use more for fun, it's really a nice way to draw a line between those two worlds, and it will help to streamline your attention in that way as well. Okay. Now, the other thing too is, sorry.
No, that's right. You and I were discussing, even as adults working in this space, trying to stay focused online when those tabs are open and you don't have a specific browser set for work. It is really, really distracting, even for the likes of us who should have really mastered those skills. But during COVID, I have been very easily distracted. So removing those distractions for the kids is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Like tabitis. I think you saw my tabitis earlier when we were chatting, which is too many tabs open over top. And I think for our children, like I used to say to my children, like 4 tabs open. You got 4 tabs open, and one's for email, one's for your Google Docs, one's for, an educational game, and one's for, say, Google Classroom. Try to provide some boundaries where you can is really important. Now, the other thing that is really important as well is if you can encourage your young people and families to start talking specifically about what it means to be active users of online. And of course, active use is being very deliberate, really specific and productive about how you're using technology. Okay, and so what that means is that in order to give our children a bit of a vocabulary around this, we need to be able to talk about specific digital behaviors that are going to give them opportunities to work with their technology in active ways. So passive use, just in contrast, is around when we spend far too much time on YouTube. We maybe are watching a silly video that just continues and YouTube is a bottomless pit if we let it be that way. So being able to talk specifically about what do I do online when I'm being an active user? What does active use look like? So we've got some examples here around, and these are ones that I use with my own boys during the first lockdown was, what are the approved games that we have? Some of these like Dance Mat Typing or Free Rice, or there's a number of subscription-based games that primary schools in particular have access to. Have those as bookmarks. Have those available as the go-to when you're done your work. Review, edit, publish. The ability to go on to a document and work through content in using those terms. Obviously, coding is a big part of active use, and that's a language that many of our children are well aware of and are engaging with as part of the digital technologies curriculum. Audio, video, capture, edit is the ability to using a device to capture evidence that might be shared on a platform, Seesaw, Class Dojo, etc. Obviously, research, the ability to go online. Kiddle is a KIDDLE is a more of a child-friendly safe search, not only in what it filtering out adult content, but also in the reading level. So you can go on to there and have access to much more content that's much more geared towards primary age. And then education comms there is really based around just the ways that you reach out to your classmates, your teacher. A lot of our children only learn how to do email because their teachers emailed them. Sometimes that's the first time they learn it. And then there's things like going on to Google Classroom, responding to a comment on Google Docs. And so, just providing a suite of terms to be able to give people the opportunity to work with a little bit more of a focus and sharpening up our learning tools is a really good way to stay safe. Now, Paula, you mentioned to me earlier today around where there's a group of kids in your neighborhood who were using their device to capture evidence in a way. What was all that about?
Yeah, I was actually really impressed with the teacher who came up with that activity. They were sitting on the edge of their driveway telemarketing dogs who came along, and what colour dogs. Being the owner of 2 dogs myself, I thought this was really cool. And they were doing their maths work through, first of all, good old chalk and concrete, but they were capturing the evidence with their devices and chatting to people as they walked past. And I thought, what a really way to have the active use of their device as part of their learning. And not just sort of absorbing their attention. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. And boy, teachers have sure had to get creative with that stuff. And home learning has amplified that need more than ever. So that's active use is a way that you can help create a little bit more conversation about what does it look like when I go online? Because I'm going on my computer to do my homework just doesn't cut it anymore. There's too many rabbit holes to fall down. The next thing is around just general access to a device. The ability to have to get access to a device, which a laptop, a Chromebook, an iPad, whatever it is. There should be some kind of user agreement, responsible use agreement that goes with that device. That's really important. So we shouldn't expect to just give our children, give our young people a device without some kind of agreement about you've got this very powerful piece of technology in your hand for your learning, and that's fantastic. But we do need to come up with that. So we actually do. Netsafe have a number of user agreements that we have that we offer around, and actually what it means is that you can have access to anything from a very shortened template that you can work and customize yourself to a variety of other user agreements that you can also find. There's a little screen grab of our Netsafe schools site where we have several different user agreements you can download, and even a home learning user agreement, which is one we've just updated recently. And also, if you're a school that's been lending out different digital devices from your school to families in need, having a digital device sign out is a good way to say, look, you are responsible for your use on this particular device. So we will provide those links as well as part of sharing back this presentation as we go here. So that's really key. I think what we will do right now, yeah, there we go, right there. So we've got student home user agreement, sign out devices, lower, upper, secondary, and then underneath that is the ability to download basically a template and create your own. So it's really just about the idea of like, let's make sure that we're being accountable and responsible for the device, because that is very much about like we care about the respect that we show to the technology we use. We care about the respect, the way we use our attention when we're using our technology. That going online is not just the Wild West. I mean, the internet is the Wild West, but when we go online, we want to make sure that we step people through it and do it responsibly. So,
I think, Andrew, there, I think some of the keywords there is that it's an agreement, it's not a contract. We spoke earlier about me thinking I was quite self-righteous when my daughter wanted to go online and I printed off a contract and she signed it. And looking back now, she would have signed anything to get a device and get online. Agreements need to be something that's really discussed, is either whether or not it's for between a student teacher or through whānau, and why is it we have these agreements and what values sit behind those agreements. Those discussions, I believe, are almost more important than what they're signing. It gets buy-in, it gets agreement, and it starts that conversation that when inevitably something does go wrong or there is a hiccup, there's some good value-based conversation between the agreements that have been made.
Yeah, and think about it in the like, I guess the polar opposite of terms and conditions, right? You don't want something that they just sign and then it gets filed away and forgotten about. Actually having an agreement of some kind that's there on the, it's on the fridge. It's part, it's something that you refer back to regularly. That's the key. It doesn't have to be, yeah.
Also, when friend groups change, when year groups change, an agreement that we make with a 5-year-old is going to look really different to a 7-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 15-year-old. So it needs to be something, like you said, that's on the fridge and regularly referred to and updated as human development milestones are met as well, or family circumstances change. Yeah,
a living document. So we are going to we're going to pivot here over to privacy in just a moment. But before we do that, which is kind of the second half of our webinar, we're going to take a look at we're going to do two things. We're going to take a look at some of the comments here, and we're going to display those. And also, what we'd like to do as well is invite you to, for those people viewing, to go to menti.com, so Mentimeter, and it's just going along the bottom there. Now, what this is these are a number, there's about 10 different online safety topics, apps, activities that we would really appreciate your help in ranking them from 1 to 10. So number 1 is say online bullying is the most important thing to you and your school community. You rank that one near the top, and the ones that are less important to you or that are having less impact in your school community, those go a little bit further down. So as we are responding to the questions and comments, if you would like to jump on to menti.com, what we will do is we will then share that information towards the end of our session today. So let's take a look at some of these comments here. All right. I know one of the questions that came through was that which, and I've heard it's here, but as well, there's several other ones as well. There's very much around what happens when something goes wrong online. What happens if I'm not sure if it's worth calling Netsafe about? What happens if it's just something, maybe my child has just been upset by something, but when I take a look at it, it doesn't upset me as much, but it seems like the sky is falling to them, and I'm not really sure how I reassure my child, because I'm actually this whole online ecosystem is very new to me. And so we are going to talk a little bit about what to do when something goes wrong and how you can contact Netsafe and find out. We have some very skilled online consultants and case managers that work with all kinds of people around just exploring options that you have. So sometimes that's a question that comes through around, making sure, hey, is this thing a big enough a problem to actually contact Netsafe about? And so just wanted to reassure you about that. I think we're going to pivot now to privacy considerations.
Yeah, kia ora. Privacy is really important, and it needs to be an ongoing conversation with our young people. Often in their hurry to share and engage online, they often overshare. One of the first places we look at oversharing is with passwords. Andrew has a great little saying about passwords, and they're like toothbrushes and shouldn't be shared. It's always a good way to engage your children into that, your students into that conversation. You know, with the disclaimer that, of course, if it's with a teacher or with a parent or a safe whānau member, sharing those passwords has a really big, important part of staying safe online. Privacy is really important about what personal information we talk to our tamariki about, what they share, whether it's sharing with someone online and they're not sure of who they're sharing with, or through what they share on photos of bedrooms, photos of school uniforms. What information are they giving that they're not sure they're giving out, and why shouldn't they be giving that out? Are really good conversations to be having with our young people. Within that as well, a lot of children that I work with these days, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they want to be influencers. And there's a lot of cases of influencers who have overshared in their youth, or not had their privacy settings set up, and they've said things that they may not believe anymore, but it comes back to haunt them. So conversations about their digital footprint, what they leave behind, really needs to start from a young age and continue all the way through the education of being online. Other considerations with privacy is apps may be free as far as money goes, but what are you actually paying for? And that's what we need to think about: their data, the algorithms that they buy into, and their settings on their devices and apps when they join in. One of Andrew's quality first jokes he did with me when I started was, what's the biggest lie we tell ourselves? And that is, I have read the terms and conditions. Because we're all in a hurry to get wherever we want to go. We scroll down and click and off we go. And actually recently there was a lady who won $10,000 because she did read the 10 terms and conditions, and some ridiculous one was, if you email this and you're the first person to email us, you win $10,000. So talking to our children about why they need to read terms or conditions, or at least have a good understanding with them and check their privacy settings regularly, is really important. And so another thing is keeping it really friendly, keeping it helpful. Don't sort of share anything that you wouldn't be wanting to say to your grandma is always a good baseline. And really checking your facts before you share them. Fake news is rife at the moment. Doing a good critical thinking lesson in your classroom about what do you read online and how can you check to make sure that it's authentic and what you are planning to share or read is real. All that stuff sort of comes into privacy and really being aware of what we're doing online. Andrew, have you got anything else to add there?
I think around, the idea of sort of the basics of online safety, we have that in this particular resource here, which is the Online Safety Parent Toolkit. Now, we have that available online. So, and in that, it does unpack some of those basics of online safety, and, around the idea of, keeping it helpful, the idea that, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? And if we ask those questions as well, then not only are we're spreading kindness, we're providing a pause before we just send out information. We're providing a little bit of we're providing a little bit of space between something that we might think, that we get angry, we get pulled into conversations online. I think our children need to know that that so much of what's happening online can be driven so much by your own kind of silo, which is like kind of find your own little tribe. But the things that upset you also are going to generate more content. So negativity bias really plays into how the internet is, the architecture of the internet. And I think it's really important that, when we talk about our digital footprint, and when we, by extending our own actions and generosity online and the way we communicate online, we're being a little bit more mindful of how we say, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? And if it's no to any of those questions, then then we just hold off, because what happens is that the internet will remember even if you forget, and you might forget for several months or years after, and then of course things will pop up again online if you're going for a job interview, or you just never know. That's the issue, is that once content goes out there, especially if it's negative content, it can live a completely new life, and it can be reshared and reposted, and that's totally out of your control. And that's so much of what we do at Netsafe, is trying to de-escalate those situations, trying to stop the fire from spreading, and then of course having the ongoing conversations. I think as well, around the keep it real, Paula, I think, the idea that, we've got to make sure that when we are saying something online, that the words that we're using online are, we're considering the audiences that are out there, that sometimes the intended audience isn't actually there, that we think. And that happens with young people when they're playing a game. They're playing Fortnite, or they're playing Minecraft, and they might be interacting with somebody online that they've actually never met in person, and so they can't tell. And that's really challenging. So keeping it real means that when you're learning a lot of these activities online, it's so important to be able to do that with people that you already know, especially at like a primary age, because people just aren't who they say they are online all the time. And so we just have to make sure, without making our kids anxious about that, we actually just have to make sure it's at the top of our minds as adults, caregivers, educators. So it's really important.
We talked earlier about the sort of analogy of when we put our young people on bikes for the first time, they've got safety wheels and helmets, and they understand that it's done for their well-being and their own safety. So keeping it real online when they're learning these games, sort of learning them on servers or with just some really close friends, is the same as sort of having those safety wheels on, where they can make mistakes, learn the appropriate language, learn the response from people online, because people responding to each other online is really different in real life. So Andrew, what you're saying about having those groups small to begin with, while we sort of have those training wheels on, and then taking them off, is just so important for their well-being online.
That's it. And in fact, I knew a parent who had a really good system. Just while I talk, you can have a look at that Mentimeter code. But what he with his daughter was playing I think Roblox, and I think what was happening was it became a bit of a after school ritual that her and a group of friends were playing Roblox, and the server they were playing on was open to a few different people, and so there were some people that were online that this dad didn't know. And so what he did was he had a little whiteboard right next to in the kitchen, actually, where he had the names of all of the people that his daughter were playing with online that he knew about. And then he put down their gaming handles next to them as well, their usernames. And it was just a way of just saying that, I'm not hovering over this game. I'm just paying attention to who you're playing with. If you were going down to the park and engaging in a game with somebody that I didn't know, well, that might be okay. But everything's out in the open there. There's a certain amount of security that comes from knowing that when you're on a playground or you're playing out, and if you're playing with strangers, everybody, people can see, and it's a much more of a public forum. But the challenge with some of these gaming sites, and even social media sites, is you can get into these servers and these closed networks where some people come in, they participate in a way, and it might be totally innocuous, a group of kids just down the road who joined, and you might not know them, but they actually are a very similar profile to your son or your daughter. But I think the ability to be able to write down, okay, you can play that game, no problem. But actually, you're only playing, because you're in primary school, for example, you're only playing with these people that I know that you know face to face. And we're actually just going to write down their usernames, because we just want to be accountable of who's actually playing the game. And then you can think about the game. You can learn about the game, as you said, about the training wheels. You can explore the platform, and you don't have to then also worry about the threat or potential threat or the influence from outside strangers. So I think that was a really interesting tactic that I think worked quite well for this parent, and got lots of eye rolls from his daughter, because she was like, what is this handbrake? Come on, all these other kids, kids are going to say, look, no other parent does this, no other, no other families like this, but actually this is where it's so important that we're talking to other parents about it as well. I think,
I think that's a really good point, Andrew, and it's been brought up in some of my parent sessions before, that when our tamariki are little and we stand at the gate and there's a whole lot of parents hovering around and we're talking about human development milestones, we know where play dates are, and as we get older, parents sort of become less and less in that space, and yet when our children start going online, having those conversations between parents about what are the games that they're playing, what are the pitfalls, what is going well, are you okay with playing this game, my child's coming to your house, what's the agreement at your house, what ratings are you okay with your child playing games of R13 and we're only 10. So one parent said to me, my child talks to whoever they want online, so I'm going to have some conversations with the adults in their lives to find out we're all on the same page and keeping these people safe. But we often get left out of the picture when we need to be right in there.
Yeah, in fact, the more time that we spend online, the more we should be talking to other parents, really. Definitely. I mean, that's not something that we can do once they're, once they get sort of into their teenage years as easily. But yeah, when they're in their very early formative years, we talk to other parents quite often. But as soon as we get a little bit older, we don't talk to other parents as much. And I think it really helps a lot if parents can talk to each other and discuss the challenges and discuss some of, what are some of the rules? Once you match up some of the guidelines with another household, that makes, it makes such a difference because you're not pushing against that tide. So, so I think now we're moving over to obviously that inevitable, what happens when students come across upsetting content.
Yeah, and so far we've talked about your filtering service, we've talked about having your user agreements, we've talked about everyone being at the table, we've talked about our privacy, and we can do all of that, but it's inevitable that at some stage there's going to be content that comes to our students, our young people, that can be upsetting, and it can have an impact on them. We've sort of got people's minds automatically jump to sort of your worst, which is your violence, sex, homophobia, racism, extremism, and there is a lot of content of that floating around the internet, and it's inevitable that there's someone out there who's going to think it's a great idea to push that into flat platforms where children sit. It's really important if and when, and it's more of a when, that your child doesn't come across some upsetting content, that you've got some really good plans in place that let them know that if we just pop back to the privacy screen, so it's really important to sort of have a no shame approach to it. So we know this isn't your fault. Are you okay? Are you safe? Let's work together to mitigate some harm in that space. Andrew and I had another good conversation this morning around what's harmful content for our young people at the moment. And yes, there is the traditional harmful content that you'll sort of see if you jump on the Netsafe website. It explains it a bit deeper. But it's also that our children have been inundated at the moment with content about COVID, content about what happened out at West Auckland this week, content about floods. There is a lot of information coming to our online spaces at the moment that can be quite confronting. I was saying to Andrew, I was watching something on demand, and suddenly the COVID ad popped up, and even just that jingle in itself, I just suddenly felt myself become really anxious. So it's important not to think just of upsetting content or inappropriate contact as being really sinister. It can just be the wrong time, the wrong age, the wrong stage, which would go back again why the classification of what our kids are using online is so important. Even, Andrew, we were talking about the buzzer that goes off between alerts on our phones. Yeah.
Well, it was one of those things I was trying for, a couple of weeks where my, leaving the device out of the bedroom, right? So obviously it's so much more challenging with home learning conditions and everybody working and living together. But the ability to have your device out of your bedroom, at least when you're going to sleep, had a massive impact on our family. And then, of course, as I was sharing that advice and that recommendation, of course, we had just gotten the COVID alert level changes that come through your phone. And then there was a civil defense alert that came through. And so it was a really challenging time to actually take the device out of the bedroom, because sometimes the device is also your security blanket that helps. You've got a child who's gone out for the night and they text you when they're safely arriving at their destination. I mean, our devices, they need to be in our bedrooms sometimes. And I know every family's different, but I think that as much as you can, the ability to be able to switch off and do it in a safe way, and especially for our young minds who need their sleep, they need to be able to switch off. Even as something as simple as just turning off your notifications. Sitting down with your children at the table, or suggest with your school community and saying, look, can we just talk about turning off? Everybody turns off at least some notifications. So when we sit down for a meal together, we're not, these pings aren't going off in the distance where we all sort of look around like sort of meerkats wondering where it came from and whose phone it was from. So I think it's very much about coming back to what you said about the harmful content. Yes, there's really insidious and harmful stuff out there. We know that, but also the constant hum, the constant alerts, the constant fragments to our attention, that has a real powerful impact on our kids. And I think it's probably even more amplified under these home learning situations, because our devices are our vessel to work, to learning, to school, to socializing, to so many things. So I think we just have to have more conversations again around, harmful content's going to be there. Here's what you can do if it happens, but also let's try to minimize the other stuff when something goes wrong. So
I think that whole planning when something goes wrong is really important. I set up a system with my child, a young person, and said, look, something is going to go wrong, and you may be the person who's even sort of made a silly choice. So coming to me and saying, or to your teacher, or to whoever's in your space, having a plan where you can say, something's happened online, I feel unsafe and I need help. As an adult, it's really important then to take a breath and go, this is going to be a big one. But the part of that plan with your young person being able to come to you is so important. Research shows us that 1/3 of young people will not talk to an adult or seek help when something goes online. And from the conversations I've had with young people, the biggest drive behind that is the fear of their device being taken away from them or losing access to their devices. We've had a lot of conversations about the harmful content of the internet, but there's also a lot of really positive things. It's really social. There's a lot of well-being things. So taking devices off children cannot just remove the fear of harm from them, but can also disconnect them from their peers and what they see as well-being. So part of that plan needs to be based around, we're going to mitigate your harm, we're going to support you. Yes, there may be a consequence, but that's secondary to let's making sure you're safe. And let's get our children talking about us when talking to us when the inevitable happens, which is they're going to see something that they're not quite okay with. That good old tummy instinct's the best way to go, isn't it? That thing you see and you go, oh, that's just not okay. Let's talk about that.
Now, the other thing we were going to talk about next, of course, is how unique New Zealand is in legislation around online harm. And so, Paula, we were discussing this, that the ability to have the HDCA as part of an act in New Zealand, which is actually something that is really powerful in how it can be used and leveraged to help people when things go wrong, when things go really wrong.
I only heard about the Harmful Digital Communications Act when I came to work at Netsafe, and the 10 communication principles that sit alongside it. Reading through them, I did have to sort of think back on some maybe previous internet choices of myself and gone, oh, where have I sat there? So I think it's really important that we educate ourselves and our tamariki at an age-appropriate time about the legislation of the HDCA and how it can support them and enable them and protect them online. It's really important that when we talk about this with our young people, that it's not done in a way of punishment. A lot of time when we talk to them about it, you can see they recognise some of their behaviour and some of the communication principles. So part of the plan that we make with our young people is, do you know about the HDCA? Do the adults in their lives, more importantly, know about the HDCA and how it can support you and how Netsafe can support you in that as well?
That's right. And I think it allows, I mean, I think what's really important to clarify here is that, the HDCA allows for Netsafe. It gives us more of an opportunity to work with providers like Facebook, like TikTok, like Instagram, that if something harmful is online, that we want to try to get it taken down. Netsafe doesn't have a magic button that we can just go and remove things from the internet, but the HDC and the skill behind a lot of our online safety consultants and people that work on the helpline is the ability to say to that person, you know what, let's get in touch with Facebook, get in touch with Instagram, get in touch with the platforms as well. But we can also support you in talking through some options, and we can actually sometimes Netsafe is in a better position than a lot of other places to be able to take that direct line and communicate with that platform to say, we need this content taken down, we need this content removed, it's causing harm in these ways. And of course, exploring the options that exist there. That's really important. And I think it's really important too, and I think we'll put it up here as well. Just once again, the ability to contact Netsafe if you're not sure is the ability to discuss options, look at the options you might have, talk to somebody on the phone, send a message, go through the web form. There are multiple ways to reach out to Netsafe, and I think we really want to encourage New Zealanders, and if you can also make a report and contact Netsafe on someone else's behalf. If you see something happening to a friend or a sibling, a peer, someone else, we provide free confidential service, and we want to be able to provide multiple opportunities and fronts where you can do that. That's really key.
Yeah, and it's important to note that you don't have to have made a decision that it breaches any of the HDCs before you give us a call. Again, we go back to that tummy feeling. If something's happening online, if there's some content, comments, pictures, there's scams, romance, online shopping doesn't get delivered, anything like that, you don't have to make that decision. You can give Netsafe a call, talk to one of our contact centre who will guide you through the process, who will give you some advice and support you in that space. It's important also to note that young people can contact Netsafe as well. We obviously encourage them to talk to a trusted adult first, but having that ability to reach out to someone anonymously can be really powerful for young people as well. I had a lovely young ladies come to me the other day and say, but what if I'm really embarrassed about what I've done? And giving her a space where she could ring somewhere, confidentiality and guaranteed, and have that conversation was really powerful for her. So yeah.
So we're just coming into the last 9 or 10 minutes here of our session here. But what I wanted to do as well was we wanted to take a look at the Mentimeter results. So we had a variety of topics that ranged from particular names of platforms that people use, things like multiple digital identities, which is not necessarily a problem per se, but for some school communities, where you've got young people toggling between several different personalities online and profiles, it can cause a challenge. So we asked you to rate these and looked like we had 32 different people had added their voice to this survey. And so coming out at the top with a pretty strong lead there is online bullying. Social media risks, number 2. Pornography is obviously a really challenging thing. Unwanted contact, privacy, and so forth. So things like TikTok, Discord, and YouTube are, those are platforms where all, are really positive forces and platforms for young people to encourage, to explore and interact. And so sometimes just talking with parents, community about, we're going to have a parent night where we talk about YouTube. 5 things you can do to stay safe on YouTube. For example, YouTube Kids, turning on the subtitles, turning off the sound, simple things like that. Those are the types of sessions I think that parents and the community really appreciate. So I just wanted to articulate to everybody who's listening today that, the ability for us to go forward from today and then host, other webinars that focus specifically on online bullying, that focus specifically on unwanted contact, take the top 4 of those topics that people voted on and focus specifically on those sessions. And again, going back to the conversation around bringing people to the table, having a session where we've got teachers, where we've got whānau, we've got different members of the community who come to these webinars, we, even if we get to level 3, the ability for us to come together face to face, gosh, even at level 2, there's going to be some hesitation about bringing people together in a physical space. So I think what we want to do at Netsafe is we want to be agile around a lot of those, the way we interact with each other. So thank you for that input. We will certainly take that back to the team and discuss how we can look at another webinar. Some other resources that I want to draw your attention to is the Online Gaming whānau Toolkit, which is actually a brand new resource for Netsafe. So this is a really handy framework when it comes to looking into the world of gaming online, and just ways that you can support that with your parents and your whānau and caregivers in your community. That's particular to gaming. The other one we have, which I flashed earlier, was the online parent toolkit here. The nice thing about this one too, as well, is that there's also this family treaty at the back, and you can get an online version of that as well. And the nice thing about that, these toolkits, is that they're translated into Samoan, Maori, into Mandarin, Tongan, Samoan. Those are really great resources to share with your community. And the other one we have, which of course TikTok, which just seems to be everywhere, is another resource that's hot off the press, is the Family Safety Toolkit, which was created, and this has been a really popular resource for many New Zealanders from around, and also with parents, with teachers, and with students. So it's an exciting resource to explore. But it's like we said earlier, sometimes you just need to have a few guardrails up to know that you can have the confidence to go into some of these platforms. I mean, the other thing too, of course, is all around, the ability to contact Netsafe. And so I hope everyone listening today who's part of this can have these contact details handy, because, the more time we spend online, the greater the risk, but also, the greater the opportunities, and the greater the opportunity it is for us to be able to work together, very much so. So that's, there's ways. There's the email, there's our text, and our education email as well, which we'll share with you again as well. The education@netsafe.org.nz, which comes to the education team, and we would be happy to answer any questions and support you. The other thing that we're doing right now, which is really exciting, is we're working on some student modules, which is around looking at different sessions that they'll become basically like lesson plans that teachers will be able to download and deliver themselves that will cover a range of topics. Many of them we've discussed here today. And so we're really excited to be working through that. So if you're a school leader, a teacher who would, hey, I'd really like to have a look at some of those. We are currently in the process of recruiting a few pilot schools and teachers. So even if you don't want to get your whole school involved, if you're a teacher that would be interested in trialing and piloting some of these lesson plans, that is a process that we're undertaking at the moment as well. And so this is a good opportunity as well to share that message as well. So a whole bunch of different ways that you can connect with us, and of course the Netsafe, the resources for schools, everything we've talked about tonight. The user agreements, the online incident guidance, everything that we've discussed, you can find under netsafe.org.nz/the-kit. Paula, I think what we should do is probably just acknowledge the help behind the scenes from, and I don't know if they can make themselves appear, but both Jonathan and Renee, who are part of the marketing and comms group at Netsafe, have been helping us at the back end.
Navigate my technical difficulties. So thank you so much. Yeah.
So
we look very fancy, and it's only because of them. So thanks, guys.
Yeah. So thanks to Jonathan and Renee for their support through that. So like I said, we will be, this will become a recorded webinar that will live on YouTube after today. And we would encourage you to share this with your colleagues and anyone in your community. We also have an education EDM, a mailing list that goes out. Some of you may have received that already. And we were in a position to share, some of those new resources that we mentioned tonight through that EDM. And of course, many of you have heard about that and are here tonight because of our session. So, we really want to thank everyone for taking the time. I know everyone's probably got a lot of Zoom fatigue, video fatigue, but we really appreciate your input. And we again, going back to that thing we said earlier around being, let's all make sure we're around the table together. We're discussing this topic. We're sharing ideas. It's not going away. The ability to work from home for our students, whether it's under a lockdown or not. I mean, the reality is more and more people are going to be, working in a home environment. So we need to make sure we're being really mindful and supportive about how that happens. Paula, any last words, any poetry you'd like to share?
Put me on the spot. No poetry, but just thank you guys for attending. Like Andrew said, I am in Christchurch. I cover all of the South Island. So if you think that we've started some good conversations today, but it is only the start of the conversations, there are some big topics out there that are weighing heavy on us as educators, as parents, and making sure that we can grow the best young people we can. So this is the start of a conversation. Please reach out to us, and we'll be really, really happy to help you.
Cool. So we'll just leave you with that education email one more time, and just on the back of what Paula just said there, we've got an advisor, Angie Webster, who's based in Wellington. she's an advisor that goes up to schools as well, and also we have Sven Hansen and Shelley Hurst, who are our two other Auckland advisors who are also fantastic advisors who would love to come out and see you. So thank you very much for your time, your attention. It's right on 4:30. I hope everyone can take a break from the screen. And thank you for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to see you. Thank you.
Ka kite.